So welcome everyone. We'll get started in about a minute or two. You are here to learn about the new district MTSS implementation plan. We're happy to have you. Awesome, thank you so much for your help. We're excited about this session. So welcome everyone. We'll get started in about a minute or two. You are here to learn about the new district MTSS implementation plan. You are here again to learn about the MTSS implementation plan, and we're excited to teach you today about how to use this in a virtual setting. And so we're going to start with just a little activity, and you should be able to see our screen. And on our screen, you should be able to see the question, how well did your school implement MTSS last year? And so in thinking about this, we're doing kind of a fist of five. So we can't see you, but fist being, minimally and five being the best, you could put in the chat how well you feel like your school implemented MTSS last year. We'd love to hear from you. And so let's talk about what MTSS really means. And so MTSS is really a multi-tiered system of support. It's really about providing supports to all students on multiple levels. It's data-driven. It's about school improvement. It also includes the professional development that your school offers. And it's not just about academics, but it focuses on social and emotional learning as well. In our department, there actually are two MTSS departments in the district. One is in teaching and learning, and that is MTSS Academics, and that is led by Donna Lawson. And Donna is on this call and will lead it here in just a few minutes. And then the other section of MTSS, there are actually three teams. One is MTSS Behavior, that's led by Sandra Hensel, who will also speak. And the other is MTSS Engagement and Re-engagement. And I lead those two. And so for MTSS Engagement, we do the toolkit work, and Re-engagement is really just for middle and high school. And so let's talk about the whys. So one, MTSS is a law. It is mandated by the Kentucky Department of Education, and it's mandated under federal law as well. This is also really our artifact of how we are showing how we support students through intervention work, but also tiered work, such as Tier 1 for all students. So remember, this is how we educate all students, but it's also part of our KDE Corrective Action Plan. And so we're excited to roll out this new version for you at this time. And so the whys, why is this important, and how does this relate to your work in your buildings as district leaders, as school-based leaders? So one, it aligns with the equity and the culture and climate pillars. And I would say it also aligns with the backpack of success skills. But we also need to have strong systems and structures to be effective with our students. And so this MTSS plan really aligns, while it falls under System 5, it really does align with all 6 of the systems. And it also aligns with your PLC work. And so we're excited to show you that today. And so what is MTSS? It's just a comprehensive framework that uses evidence-based practices to support all students in their academic and behavioral needs. But a framework means that it can be customized for each school. So it's not cookie cutter where you have to do it this way, but really it allows you to have the freedom to do it the way that you need to support your students. We've changed the name. It used to be an MTSS handbook, and now we're calling it the implementation plan because we want this to be a guidance document that helps you to focus on planning and decision-making so that you can determine which interventions and resources that you should implement to support your students. So there are different uses for this implementation plan. There are myriad of ways to utilize the MTSS implementation plan. There are 3 examples given. So for your behavior teams, for PLC work, and for administrative purposes. But you as the school staff will figure out ways to use this to the best of your ability to support your students. Individual teachers can also use this plan to inform them of different school personnel responsibilities for specific tasks or what interventions your schools are using. So this is really going to be your driving force for how you support students in your building. There are 7 components in the new implementation plan. There were 7 components before, but we've reorganized them just a little bit. And so we're excited to tell you that it's not in a Word document anymore, this long 30-page Word document. We've reorganized the implementation plan to be in a Google Sheet. And so in Google Sheets, you're able to see each component via a tab. And we're going to show you that here in just a little bit. But what we've done is we've reorganized it so that it really does follow the PLC process of planning and delivering and then evaluating. And so if you look at each component as we go through, think about this through the lens of the PLC work. The really neat part about this new plan is that we are able to have resources and directions very clearly identified so that you can find them and refer back to them as needed. So on the very first page, it's a little blurry to see, but there is a page of directions. And on that page of directions, we also have resources. And this page is really organized by component. And so under each component, there's a description, and then there are resources for how to actually complete that component with great examples and exemplars that can help you. We've had examples and exemplars in the past, but they were hard to figure out and to find. And so now you'll have that information in blue readily available for you and just out there so that anyone who sees this template can actually access. Donna, that's you.
So this first section is school information, and the focus of this section is school data and sharing with stakeholders, specifically demographics, as well as the protocol to use with collaboration with stakeholders. Basically, this slide tells the story of a school by describing the school community and sharing the vision and the mission. It also explains how this document will be used to implement MTSS systems in the school. It is imperative that every member of a school understands their MTSS system and structure, that they can explain it clearly, and most importantly, that they can follow it. Okay, the next slide is component 1. It's a collaborative analysis of data. And the focus of this slide is to ensure that school-based MTSS or multi-tiered systems of support and SAT or student assistance teams are identified and that leads are appointed. This component includes an implementation section in which schools check what they have that is currently in place. And there's also a linked documentation section to link documents that are used by the school. We just ask that schools make sure that there's no identifying student information housed in these documents that are placed here. In the cycle protocol section, a school should link the outline of each team's responsibilities and their timelines and their next steps. So as in every component, there is an example resource in the blue box that is linked as well for schools' convenience. So this is component 2, and it's universal screeners and diagnostics. And with this focus, schools are checking the screener that they're using as well as the timeline that they plan on following. There are 3 questions for schools to consider for behavior and academics. What would contribute to effective implementation? What is their plan with the information that they gain from the screeners? And what are next steps for student acceleration? It's vital that we all understand the importance of assessments and assessment data. And we all need to ask ourselves, if we're going to assess, what are we going to do with the data? The resources linked in the blue box include map reports, student risk screening scales, and threat assessment guidelines, procedures, and protocols. And then in the next section, this is component 3, measurable definition of problem areas. The focus of this component is to define problem areas using multiple data points for both academics and behavior. There's a section to link a flow chart that outlines entrance and exit criteria that schools will use for tiered supports, and 5 questions that encourage them to consider how are they identifying problems, and how is it determined when students need supports and to what level they need the supports. What are times that are required, and how are goals set? So there are many resources linked in this section, including decision rules and flowchart examples, also in that blue box, similar to the other components. And then we have component 4, leveled supports, with the focus of accelerating student learning through adequate support and interventions. And what you're going to do here is identify specific learning objectives using assessment data for all of your tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Schools check what they are implementing for each tier, and district-supported reading and math resources are listed. Notice that there is a box titled Other in this section, and this is a location to indicate independent choices that a school might make. Resources include tier descriptions and evidence-based literacy and math programs and strategies, also in the blue box. And I think, Sandra, it's back to you.
I asked some restorative practices, but then they also, like Donna mentioned in the previous one, include that box for other, because you may be doing compassionate schools or PATH or another social emotional learning curriculum. You could certainly put that in there as well. So again, it's identifying what you're doing, and it's indicating how frequently you all are implementing that. And it's for all 3 tiers as well. Component 5 is really a significant documentation for progress of accountability. So this is where you're linking in all of your documents that indicate what you're using to make decisions, what data you're using, what tools you're using, and all of that. One thing we want to make sure to mention is that if you upload anything, you want to make sure to remove any student identifiers, because multiple people have access to this, and we want to make sure that we're not violating any privacy of students, teachers, that sort of thing. So all you want really is to show us templates or show us samples where you've removed all the information with student identifiers. But you're just going to link all this directly into this page here. Component 6 has a couple pieces to it. And part of that is that identifying a pre and post intervention data outcomes, determining how students are flowing in and out of tiers. How are you doing that? How are you making sure that students are getting the appropriate supports that they need? But then it's also, we have built in checkpoints in September, and on the actual plan, it actually says September, not August, because these aren't due until September. And then in December and in May, because like Naomi said at the beginning, we really do want this to be a living document that is utilized throughout the year. So we've built in these checkpoints with some reflection questions and some check-in questions throughout the year, so that you come back, revisit this document, take a look at it, and see if any revisions need to be made in order to keep it accurate as to what you're actually implementing in your building. Component 7 is parent information, parent communication. How is your school communicating to parents when their student needs to receive some tier 2 or tier 3 interventions? When are they going to be receiving, when are they exiting those interventions and just receiving tier 1 support? All those kind of communications, this is the place to link that and to indicate the great work that you're doing with parents. So I want to talk a little bit about where all this is housed. So each zone has a folder or a Google Drive, shared drive. And in that shared drive, you'll see the sample here is Zone 1s. I just kind of picked on them for this. And in there are several different documents and folders. One is training for principals, and that's the training that principals received in this, and one is training for teachers, because we really do want school leaders to be training their entire staff in the MTSS implementation plan so that they are aware of what it is and how to use it as well. This is where the plan itself is housed, so school leaders can go in and download this template and enter their own plan information. There's also feedback form, because once schools submit the plan, the MTSS support teams will be working and providing feedback for every single school on every single component, and just giving them some of that information on just making sure that everything was done accurately, that we don't think you missed anything, because we want to make sure, again, that this is reflecting the work that you guys are doing. You're doing a lot of hard work. We want to make sure it's reflective of that. We have look-fors. So we have, as a principal, what kind of things should you be monitoring? For the assistant superintendents, what kind of things should they be monitoring? So we have that look-for document in that zone folder. We also have a timeline of when things are due. And I'm not sure if Naomi mentioned at the beginning, but these are due September 15th. And then we have where they're going to be housed. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you. So in there is this document here, and it's just a list of all the schools in the zone, the principal, the MTSS school point of contact, because that's not always the principal. It might be another administrator or a resource teacher. But once your school plan is complete, you're just going to go into this document and create a hyperlink that you link right here to your school name. And that way you're not having to email it to anyone. You don't have to worry about it getting lost. It's all going to be right there for you. And this is what that zone folder looks like. I do want to take you quickly to the actual plan. So this is what you saw kind of screenshotted in the slide. And so this is that really important directions page that Naomi talked about. And you can see how it goes by component with all of these great resources linked. One other thing I want to mention too is that as you all are completing these implementation guides, we would love to pull some exemplars that we can add. If you have a form or a document that you think is really exceptional, or that we think is really exceptional, we'll be asking you for your permission if we could use it and link it in here as a resource for other schools to use. Oh, so actually I should have stayed out. And so then there's a couple other documents I just want to show you on this first one, and then Donna's going to talk about the next one. We know that MTSS is a little more challenging in virtual learning. And so we've created a couple of documents. This one here is tiered behavior interventions for virtual learning. And there's a link to it here in the presentation. And if you follow that link, it takes you to this. And what it does is identify for each tier what behavior interventions are still appropriate for virtual learning. And you're going to see that it's a...
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay, so the next slide is the same that Sandra was just talking about with behavior. It's the same with academics. Academic tiered supports can be more difficult, as we all know, in the virtual world as well. So this is just an outline of strategies or ideas or important pertinent aspects, especially in a virtual environment, along with some ideas and linked resources that might be of assistance.
And so now, just gotta make sure you can hear me. We're gonna talk about the Jamboard. Oh, good, I'm not on mute. And so I just put a link in the chat that is a link to our Jamboard. Perfect. And so we wanted to do a real quick interactive Jamboard to get your thoughts. for how do you implement MTSS in a virtual setting. And so those of my resource teachers that are on here know that we use Jamboard, we train on Jamboard all the time. And Jamboard is just a great way to have an interactive board for folks to be able to share ideas. And so on the Jamboard, what we want you to do is add comments via sticky notes and make connections. And so once you get the presentation, it's the last slide or the next to the last slide. And we'd love to see the Jamboard, you making connections on the Jamboard. We do have one final activity. So even though we have run out of time almost, we'd love to hear from Vista 5, how well do you think your school will implement MTSS this year? And so that's really our final activity. We'd love to hear, based on we now have this wonderful new tool. And of course, everyone is anxious about what this will look like in a virtual setting when we have synchronous learning. And so how well do you think your school will be able to implement MTSS this year?
All right, so Naomi, it's up there. If they just want to, oh, look at, they're all jumping in, and they are trying to, they're going to start answering for you with a sticky note. How can school teams implement MTS in the virtual setting? And I'm going to go ahead and, oh, look, you got it. There we go.
Awesome. Love it.
I know, it's great.
And so, as you are putting in your activities, this will be shared in this setting, and so you can go back and look at this Jamboard. And so we're so excited that you are going on and adding post-its so that these ideas can be shared all around with everyone who has a copy of this presentation. And so we don't have a lot of time for questions. We only have about 3 minutes left. First of all, I will say thank you all for joining. We thought we didn't know how many people would actually come and see our session at the end of the day on Friday, but again, we're so happy that that you're here to learn about the implementation plans and know that your MTSS academic resource teachers, your MTSS behavior resource teachers, your MTSS engagement resource teachers, and Sandra, Donna, and myself are here to support you with this work. And so you're not doing this alone. We're here as a resource for you. So please feel free to reach out.